Nung lumipat po ako kasi dito, wow, I was a wreck. So, parang pagpasok ko dito,
Alex, can you tell us about the match earlier? Seems very interesting.
Yeah, it was super fun. My very first mix though.
Mali is totally different to other countries because cattle roam the streets. Cattle shit on the ground. People
Destroyed on live TV, Alexa became the target of a brutal media attack that nearly broke her, until her most unexpected defender emerged. With cameras rolling and lights blazing, millions of viewers across the Philippines watched as one of the most trusted voices in broadcast journalism dropped a bombshell that sent shockwaves through the sports world. What followed wasn't merely controversial, it was catastrophic and cruel, threatening to change everything for a 20-year-old tennis player already bearing the hopes and dreams of an entire nation. Welcome back to tennis, where we go beyond the scoreboards and rankings to uncover the raw, unfiltered truth behind the baselines. Today's story is unlike anything we've covered before, and it reaches far beyond the numbers on a chart. Destroyed on live TV, Alexa became the target of a brutal media attack that nearly broke her until her most unexpected defender emerged. With cameras rolling and lights blazing, millions of viewers across the Philippines watched as one of the most trusted voices in broadcast journalism dropped a bombshell that sent shockwaves through the sports world. What followed wasn't merely controversial, it was catastrophic and cruel, threatening to change everything for a 20-year-old tennis player already bearing the hopes and dreams of an entire nation. Welcome back to tennis, where we go beyond the scoreboards and rankings to uncover the raw, unfiltered truth behind the baselines. Today's story is unlike anything we've covered before, and it reaches far beyond the numbers on a chart. She was, by every measure, an institution, but on this particular evening something went terribly wrong. The discussion turned to Philippine sports, specifically tennis, and more specifically the rising star Alexandria, and to the possibility of her representing the country at upcoming major tournaments, including the US Open later that year. What should have been a moment of national pride, a chance to celebrate a homegrown athlete who had already achieved what no other Filipino had in professional tennis, instead became a public execution. With a dismissive wave of her hand that seemed to physically reject the idea, Tienko delivered her verdict, the gesture alone dripping with sarcasm and contempt. Then came the words, sharper than any groundstroke Alexa had ever faced, "Don't embarrass the nation." 4 simple words, yet heavy with insult and implication, suggesting that Alexa wasn't good enough, that she would fail on the world stage and bring shame to her country. Better to stay home than risk the humiliation of trying, the anchor seemed to imply. And it wasn't just what was said, but how it was said, the mockery in her tone, the laugh that escaped as she entertained the idea of Alexa competing at the highest level that made the moment so devastating. This wasn't constructive criticism from a concerned commentator, it was ridicule delivered from a position of power, a public figure using her platform to tear down rather than build up. The tennis community, both in the Philippines and around the world, sat in stunned silence for a brief moment before the backlash exploded. Social media erupted like a long-dormant volcano, finally reaching its breaking point. Twitter turned into a war zone, Facebook comment sections became battlefields, and the hashtag #RespectAlexa began trending almost immediately. Furious fans, fellow athletes, and sports journalists struggled to comprehend what they had just witnessed. How could someone with Tienko's experience and influence mock a young athlete who had devoted her entire life to her sport? Alexa wasn't an entitled celebrity chasing attention. She was a fighter who had been grinding on the professional circuit since her teenage years, sacrificing normal adolescence for endless hours on practice courts around the world. She trained at the prestigious Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain, competed in junior Grand Slams, and clawed her way up the professional rankings through sheer discipline and perseverance. All of it was achieved through sheer determination and talent, only for her to be told by her own country's media establishment that she should stay home rather than risk embarrassing the nation. The backlash was swift and unforgiving. Critics called out the hypocrisy of a media culture that demands success while offering no support during the long, difficult climb toward it. They exposed the damage caused by placing impossible expectations on young athletes while simultaneously betting against them, questioning what purpose such cruelty served beyond manufacturing controversy and ratings at the expense of a young woman's mental health and confidence. Sports psychologists weighed in as well, warning of the potentially devastating effects public humiliation can have on an athlete's performance and well-being. Imagine preparing for the biggest matches of your life while knowing that back home, one of the most powerful voices in the media has already written you off as a future failure. Imagine carrying the weight of potential embarrassment, knowing that millions are watching and waiting to see whether you will prove the doubters right. Yet the story doesn't end there. In fact, it was only beginning. because what happened next was so unexpected and so far out of left field that it seemed almost unbelievable. Enter Pauline Hanson. For those unfamiliar with Australian politics, Hanson is a figure who evokes strong reactions. As the founder and leader of the One Nation Party, she has built her career on controversial positions and fiery rhetoric, becoming known for her hardline stance on immigration, her Australia First messaging, and her willingness to say what other politicians avoid. She is, to put it mildly, a deeply polarizing figure who has spent years at the center of political controversy and, by any rational analysis, the last person anyone would expect to enter a debate about a young Filipino tennis player. She was the absolute last person anyone would expect to ride to the defense of a Filipino tennis player under attack from her own country's media, and yet, that is exactly what happened. Breaking her silence in a move that left political analysts baffled and sports commentators scrambling for context, Hanson issued a public statement that stunned audiences everywhere. She wasn't speaking about immigration policy or economic nationalism. She was speaking about Alexa, and she was furious over how the young athlete had been treated. Hanson didn't hold back. With the same intensity she brings to parliamentary debates, she launched into a passionate defense of a 20-year-old being publicly crucified by her own media establishment. She condemned the cruelty of Tiangco's remarks, highlighted the destructive pressure placed on young athletes when they are subjected to open mockery, and stressed the importance of supporting competitors rather than tearing them down before they've even had a chance to compete. She is 20 years old, Hanson declared, her voice carrying a conviction that commanded attention regardless of political differences. She is carrying an entire nation on her shoulders, Hanson continued, and instead of receiving support and encouragement, she is met with ridicule and mockery that is un-Australian and frankly unconscionable. The irony was impossible to ignore. An Australian politician known for controversial views on other nations stepping in to defend a Filipino athlete from attacks by Filipino media. Absurd as it seemed, the effect was immediate and seismic. The narrative shifted overnight, no longer focused on whether Alexa was good enough, but on the toxic culture of tearing down national heroes before giving them a chance to succeed. The real embarrassment was no longer the possibility of losing a match, but the shame of a media establishment so cynical and faithless that it took a foreign politician to remind them to support their own athletes. International outlets soon picked up the story, with sports media that had never covered Philippine tennis suddenly paying attention. What began as a sports controversy evolved into a cultural reckoning, a case study in media responsibility, national pride, and athletic achievement. Think pieces proliferated, debates erupted, and one question echoed throughout it all. How had things become so broken that Pauline Hanson, of all people, had to be the voice of reason? Behind the scenes, reports began emerging from within broadcasting circles, painting a picture of the fallout inside Tiangco's camp, where the veteran anchor was said to be genuinely stunned by the global reaction, the trending hashtags, and the unexpected defense from Australia, all combining into a sobering moment of reckoning, filled with regret. The realization soon set in that this was not just another controversial opinion destined to fade with the news cycle, but a defining moment, one that alienated an entire generation of sports fans and threatened Tiangco's credibility as a fair and supportive voice for Filipino achievement. The silence from her camp that followed spoke volumes. No apology, no clarification, no attempt to contextualize or walk back the remarks, only a deafening, uncomfortable quiet that stood in stark contrast to the uproar she had ignited. Meanwhile, on the court, the stakes for Alexa could not have been higher. A victory over Parks would push her into the second round, matching her best Grand Slam performance and opening the door to surpass it with another win. At this stage of her career, every ranking point matters. Defending and improving her top 50 position depends on consistent results at Grand Slams. These wins are essential not just for pride, but for securing direct entry into future majors and avoiding the grueling qualifying rounds that sap both physical and mental energy before the main draw even begins. Beyond rankings and statistics, however, lies the larger question of legacy, what this moment represents for Philippine tennis, with Alexa standing as a pioneer, blazing a trail no Filipino before her has walked. Alexa is venturing into uncharted territory, operating in a space no Filipino tennis player has successfully navigated before. Every victory, breakthrough, and moment of success expands what's possible for the next generation, as young Filipino athletes watch someone who looks like them competing on the world's biggest stages. The weight of that representation is immense, and it becomes even heavier when your own media establishment publicly questions your abilities. Yet this is precisely what makes the moment so important. If Alexa wins this match and goes on a deep run in the tournament, it won't just validate her years of sacrifice and relentless hard work, it will validate the dreams of every young Filipino athlete who has been told they aren't good enough, that they should stay in their lane, or that they will only embarrass themselves if they try. As Monday morning approaches in Melbourne, anticipation is reaching a fever pitch. Tennis fans are marking their schedules, Filipino communities worldwide are setting alarms for the early start time, and media outlets are gearing up to cover every angle. And somewhere in the Philippines, Mel Tiangco and her colleagues are likely watching closely, perhaps beginning to question whether they made a catastrophic misjudgment. The stage is perfectly set, the players are ready, the controversy has peaked, and every element aligns for a match that transcends the usual boundaries of a first-round Grand Slam encounter. Will the narrative of embarrassment crumble under the weight of real achievement? Will Pauline Hanson's unlikely defense be vindicated by Alexa's performance? Will she rise above the drama and let her racket deliver the final word? We're about to find out. Here at Champions Tennis, we'll bring you comprehensive coverage, breaking down tactics, analyzing key points, and delivering all the post-match interviews and press reactions from this landmark showdown. When Alexa steps onto that court, we'll be right there with you, experiencing every high and low, every brilliant winner, and every crushing error. But before the first serve, we want to hear from you, the Champions Tennis community. What's your take on this entire controversy? Did Mel Tiangco cross a line with her comments, or was she simply honest in her assessment? And what about Pauline Hanson's intervention? Could anyone have predicted that twist in a million years? Most importantly, what's your prediction for Eala versus Parks? Who takes the victory, and what's your score prediction? Will Eala dominate in straight sets, or will it go the distance in a 3-set battle? Drop your thoughts and predictions in the comments. We read every single one and love hearing from you. If this deep dive into one of the wildest, most dramatic stories in tennis right now fired you up, do us a favor and smash that like button. Every like helps us reach more fans who deserve the real stories behind the headlines. And if you're new to tennis, or if you've been watching but haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to hit subscribe and ring the notification bell. We bring the most in-depth, passionate, and honest tennis coverage anywhere, and you won't want to miss a single upload. This is Champions Tennis, where we cover tennis the way it deserves, with passion, honesty, and respect for the athletes who sacrifice everything to compete at the highest level. We'll see you in the next video, and we'll see Alexa on the court in Melbourne.
Nung lumipat po ako kasi dito, wow, I was a wreck. So, parang pagpasok ko dito,
Excited about the games?
Oh, excited naman, syempre. Ang haba ng biyahe. Walang Spain, but